Hey Guild Wars 2 gamers, Mukluk here, and today is Saturday, July 5th, and we have got some Guild Wars 2 news. The next teaser for what we are assuming to be is upcoming class specializations has been released. Now, originally, I anticipated that they were going to release one yesterday. However, yesterday was the 4th of July, something I completely forgot about because I never leave my office. So that is, for anyone outside the United States, it's a holiday in the USA, which is where ArenaNet has one of their main offices. So that is probably why that they didn't post anything yesterday. They were probably all out of the office. That's my guess anyway. Today's picture, today's teaser is this photo right here, and a little zoom in on it here, is same background, same color scheme, and we have got what appears to be 3 playing cards. Now, the symbol that is on the cards, there's 2 things that I think it could be. Either the diamonds, any playing card suite has the hearts, the clubs, the spades, and the diamonds on them, or an initiative point. The initiative system in Guild Wars 2, for anyone who's not a thief main, they have to spend initiative to use most of their abilities. And it looks like a diamond, which could mean that this is going to be the new thing for thief. So, what is it? I've got a collection of guesses here, just like last time. Some of these are my own guesses, some of these are from my Discord, and some of these are ones that I thought had some value from the Reddit post and some other community sites that I've gathered together over the last half hour. So, here, without further ado, first off is a gambler. Someone who is just a class focused on a gambling mechanic in some way, shape, or form. Now, how would that translate to game mechanics? I have seen some pretty funny responses that I don't think are legit, like you do damage based on how much money is in your bank, or you have to spend ECTOs on every major attack, things like that. Funny, but I don't think that's how they're going to do it. One thing I thought of was how lightning did damage in Diablo 2. It would hit for between 1 and 100. Or 1 in 1,000, depending on the level, or 1 in 10,000. But the minimum damage was always 1. It didn't increase. So your damage would be just like all over the place every time you attacked. Could be something like that, where, it's like, okay, I do 1 to 100. I know my average damage is 50, so I do 50 DPS. But there can be good times and bad times, where there could be fights where I roll really high a lot, and fights where I roll really low a lot. Could be something like that. Another system could be some sort of luck-based system. Now again, how would that translate into game mechanics? In something like Dungeons & Dragons, when you just roll a dice, luck could just be add 5 to whatever you roll. Or instead of a nat 20 being a crit, a 19 or a 20 is a crit. Things like that. Maybe it'll increase your crit chance for an ability, or something like that. These are all just possibilities. Super brainstorming right now, right? I'm super just, throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. Another thought that someone had when they saw this was Jack of all trades. Now, I don't know how that would translate to game mechanics unless you were able to swap to different things, like on the fly, like, oh man, our healer died, I can, do something to become a mediocre healer for a time. But that almost sounds like legend swapping for Revenant to me, so I'm not a big believer in that theory, but it's a possibility, sure. And on that note, got some media references related to cards that I thought were worth mentioning. First off is Roll the Bones. This is a skill on the Outlaw Rogue in World of Warcraft. Now, World of Warcraft, the Rogue is basically what the Guild Wars 2 Thief is. They're sneaky, they're stabby, they wear leather, they sneak around. One of their specializations, if you want to call it that, in that game is the Outlaw. And the Outlaw has a skill called Roll the Bones. So when you use Roll the Bones, big dice rolls, and it will give you a random buff for 30 seconds. It could be a system like that. Maybe they will have a button that they use, and it will just, roll a dice in the air above their head, and depending on what it lands on, something very crappy or very powerful could happen with some things in between. Imagine like a 6-sided dice graphic would roll above their head. If it lands on a 6, they get a stupid buff for a while. If it lands on a 1, they just hear a fart noise. And if it's a 2 through 5, maybe 2 is swiftness, 3 is fury, 4 is might. I don't know. But they could do some very interesting stuff just with like a dice roll mechanic. That could absolutely be it. some other things, which you might have already seen my tabs up here at the top that I thought were worth mentioning, are some other characters in media that used cards a lot. Maybe they'll pull inspiration from these. Maybe I'm way off. Anyone who grew up in the 90s probably remembers the X-Men cartoon. Now, this is from the reboot, I think, but there was a character in there named Gambit. Gambit was really big on killing people with playing cards. I say people, giant robots, of course. But his whole thing was anything that he could come into contact with, he could turn into a bomb. He really liked using cards because in every pocket, you know, you got a deck of cards, that's over 50 bombs. So he got really good at just using cards as his weapons because he could just have a deck in every one of his pockets and he would not hardly ever have to worry about running out of ammunition. So he was, you know, really big symbol for something like this. Another one was Twist of Fate. Now, Twist of Fate is or I should say Twist of Fate, not a Twist of Fate, but Twist of Fate himself, or TOF, is a character from League of Legends. And if you don't play League of Legends, just gonna focus on his card mechanic here for a second. This is just a cinematic he happened to be in. He had an ability where he would draw a card. You would hit a button, and then cards would flash above his head, and they would be either blue, yellow, or red, repeating, and you would hit the button a second time, and then the card would imbue into your next attack. So if you locked it in on blue and threw blue, it would refill your mana bar. If you locked it in on red and threw red, it would do a huge AoE damage and slow, I believe. And if you locked it in on yellow, this was the one for murdering people, it would make big single target damage and stun, which is why he was flashing the card as yellow in that cinematic. So they could absolutely have a system where you see, like, you know, some cards being drawn rapidly, and then you hit the button again and lock in on a card you want, and then that makes something happen. Again, might have nothing to do with that. This is just, you know, inspiration pulling from another game. That was how League of Legends did a card mechanic. And I think that's it. And by that's it, I mean, I think that's all the ideas I've got right now. Now, it's only been half an hour at the time of recording this since this post came out. I'm sure some people will have some awesome additional ideas going forward that will be so obvious. Like Lucy here says, Arcanist Thief, the Uno +4. But yeah, definitely intriguing. And again, it might not even be Thief. A lot of people are thinking it's going to be Thief. I'm kind of leaning that way as well. But who knows, maybe Revenant is going to channel the legend of a compulsive gambler. Someone who lost all their ECTOs and died from loan sharks. I don't know. Like, it could absolutely be other things. I'm leaning toward Thief because that looks a lot like an initiative symbol, and, you know, it kind of seems like the kind of thief that, or seems like the kind of thing that a thief would get into in their free time, gambling with cards or something like that. But like the idea of some kind of, you know, luck of the draw based class, but I'm curious what they're going to do with it. And as always, what do you think? This is basically brainstorming. All we have is this picture. What do you think it could mean? Do you think any of my guesses were, you know, on the right track, or do you have any that are completely different? I'm very eager to see what you guys come up with, and I will see you in the comment section.